Hi, my name is Jesse Hanselman with Kcnielsen out of Algona. Today we're going to go over a few things to look for as far as safety and also combine setting going into the season. So first thing, like I said, safety. Anytime you're working underneath the combine or around it, we've got our big safety stop underneath here. Make sure that piece is down anytime you're going to be around that. Also, if you're working around it, anytime you get out of the cab, make sure everything is stopped moving. Next place we're going to go is we're going to talk about the feeder house chain. This is a newer S700 series combine with the 4-strand chain. Our older combines are going to have 3-strand, but what we're going to want to do when we're unhooking the corn head and the bean head, just take a look at everything, make sure our chains are running straight, and also make sure our chain tension is where it's supposed to be at. That can be done on the sides through the spring tensioners on there that you can see right down in here. While we're up on the feeder house, we're also going to look at our chain here and our coupler. These newer combines are on a 32 tooth and a 26 tooth. We're going to run the smaller one in corn. On these S-series combines, we generally just leave it in the 26 tooth position. On our 60 and 70 series combines, they have a 26 and a 22 tooth. Still run the small on the corn. Some guys will switch that to the high side on the beans if we have any feeding issues. The older combines, they run the 22 tooth and the 15 tooth. That one you will generally change the large sprocket for beans, small sprocket for corn. So after the grain comes off the feeder house, it'll go through the feed accelerator. That's kind of the transition between the feeder house and then into the separating area, into the rotor here. Most of our separation is going to take place up in here in the concave area. There's 5 rows of separator grates in there. If you can see those, might be kind of tough, but those are kind of a rifled edge. When we set these for corn, we're going to want that to where the cob is just being squeezed enough to roll the grain off there without breaking the cob. When we go into beans, we've got kind of 2 different ways of doing that. Some guys will run it tighter and slower. Other guys will run it on the high side and open it up a little bit. It's all going to come down to grain quality and how tough that straw is. Another thing to mention up here on the concave is we want to make sure that it is leveled and zeroed. So what that means is we will take these loose up here and roll the rotor around until it'll just barely tick on the concave, and then back it off about 1 millimeter and then zero it out. So by zeroing that out, then if you call in and have any questions as far as where to set that at or where John Deere's book says to set it, then it'll be more accurate. We've had occurrences where it is not zeroed out and the customer can't get it set right because, you know, it's off 10 millimeters, then John Deere's book is obviously way off at that point. So a leveled concave will help you out a lot as far as not cracking cobs as well. So as I said, most everything happens up here for action, getting it off the cob and out of the pods. Anything after that moves into the back area here where the tines are at. These tines in here are made to knock all the loose grain off of basically out of the crop mat and all the loose material in there. So that falls off of there, it falls onto the return floor and then comes back forward and then drops on to the chaffer and starts working its way through the machine. So while it's on the chaffer, it has to get through the chaffer, otherwise it will go out the back of the combine. So keeping that chaffer open far enough to let the grain fall in is the first step. Once it goes through the chaffer, it has the opportunity to either go through the sieve or go into tailings. So if it goes through the chaffer and the sieve, then it's onto the clean grain system. Making sure the chaffer and sieve are also zeroed out is very important. Same thing if you're using John Deere's books and it says to set it at 14 and your chaffer is off by 10, it's going to be very hard to set that machine according to our settings and also John Deere settings. So after the grain comes off of the rotor, it will go into what's called the discharge feeder, which is going to be attached to this large pulley here. You're going to want to really make sure that that belt is tight according to spec on the gauge. They went to a newer double rib belt on the S-series combines, just because some of the older ones, if that belt got loose and slipped, that's generally where it would plug up. If you ever plug a rotor up, it's almost always right there at the discharge beater, and it is not fun to undo. So make sure that belt stays tight and is in good shape. But that basically transfers the material off the rotor down onto our residue disposal system down here. So behind this, we're going to have our chopper. We're going to run that on the low side for corn, high side for beans. On our 60-70 series combines, those would have the big arm here to take it off, move the belt back and forth. On the S series combines, it's all got its own gearbox. You just need to select the gear. The belts are always hooked up. So on beans, you also put in the stationary knives down here. Just loosen this wing nut, slide them in for beans. Make sure you get it cut up well on the high side. I know some guys will cheat those out a little bit if the straw's pulling really hard to save on horsepower, but you really got to watch and make sure you don't basically don't cut yourself short on not doing a good job of cutting debris up, because you'll fight that the next year. You'll see it in emergence and everything else if you've got a bad crop mat out there. So moving around to the back here, this machine has a manual tailboard on it with the manual fins underneath here. You're going to want to do the best you can to get a full spread out of there. So if you have a 35-foot head, you're going to have these tipped out pretty much the entire way. If you're on a 30 or a 25-foot head, you may have to narrow them up so you're not throwing material into your uncut beans. Now, some other machines do have what's called the power cast tailboard. There we go. And you can set the speed of that from the cab to make sure your spread's going out the full width. If you are having trouble getting material in the center of the machine, I know that can be an issue with the power cast. There are some pieces in the center that you can remove, and that will help leave some more residue in the center of the machine. So one thing to check going into season there, after you've got your machinery all home, you got it all pulled out of the shed, you think it's ready to go, it's always nice to hook up the corn head and the bean head, go through the calibration procedures, make sure there's no mice or anything that have got into the wiring. We've had that before where everything's ready to go. It worked fine here at the store. Customer gets it home, puts it in the shed for, you know, a couple months or even 6 months if they got it done earlier in the year, and then wires get chewed on, and then you have sensors that don't work. Everybody's always in a lot better mood when the beans aren't ready to go and the machine's broke. Gives you a little time to fix it. Helps our shop, and obviously helps keep the customer rolling when it's actually time to go.
On these combines, some of the major daily grease points are down here on the reverser. These are daily. And then up here on this back of the feeder house drive, these are 50-hour grease certs. A lot of the other ones, they're marked on the side. They're 50, 100, 200, 400-hour grease certs. Except for back there on the rotor drive and the fan drive over there, they are 50-hour grease cert. They need to get grease so everything moves and slides in and out like they should.
Okay, we're going to talk about safety here. One of the things you want to make sure that you keep everything cleaned out. Use a leaf blower at the end of the day and just blow everything out of the up by the exhaust area, because that gets very hot. And even the rest of the machine, you need to check and open it up, take the shields off, get the stuff blowed out. You know, we got a year like this where it's going to be dry. The way it's looking, we need to make sure, because there's going to be a lot of trash out there, and that's going to whirl around. You get a back wind, a tailwind, it's going to whirl around and get up in here. So that's one of the things you want to make sure that you are always cleaned out, because we've had fires in these areas. We had one just not too long ago, so you want to make sure it's clean.
Hello, this is Bruce Walter, Aftermarket Manager for the 11 KCN locations. Just a few things we need to keep in mind when we go into the fall harvest season. Safety should always be top of our list, not only in the field, but when you're traveling from location to location. Secondly, set up a time for us to come out and go over your combine and head with you, or the one-on-one. That way you're ready to go to the field. But don't wait till the last minute, because we can't be at every place when everybody wants to start in the field. We'll have extended hours this fall again for parts and service. Don't hesitate to give us a call for help. We've stocked up our parts inventory, so the parts on hand, you should have them when you need them. And as always, thanks for your business and have a safe fall.